Good evening and welcome to the February 18th meeting of the West Sacramento Planning Commission. Tonight's agenda is available on the counter along with request to speak cards. A reminder to everyone that a request to speak card should be completed and turned over to the clerk prior to completion of any staff presentation. And for those speakers wishing to speak on items not on the agenda but within the jurisdiction of this commission, please write the item number on your card. All speakers will be limited to 3 minutes. There is a timer on the side and it will count down. And that is for the purpose of giving everybody a chance to speak. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and televised, so all speakers, in order to be recognized, must be called on by the chair and come forward to the microphone. Speaking in public may cause some individuals to be uncomfortable, so everyone is asked to be professional and respectful at all times. Next item is our Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Moore, will you lead us with the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I have requests to speak for item number A. There are, for presentations by the, for presentations not on the agenda, for matters not on the agenda. And just as a reminder, the commission is prohibited by law from discussing issues not on the agenda brought to them at this time. And I have Mickey Fawcett. If you can please come up to the microphone. This is for item, oh, this is for item number 2. I believe, Katie, is this for item number 2?
Yeah, I'm here for item number 2.
Okay, sorry, then this is, at this time, then we have no speakers, request for item A? Katie? No speakers, okay, sorry. We'll move on then to the next item. David, are there any correspondence and staff communications?
Yes, 2 items to note quickly for you. At last night's city council meeting, they approved second reading on the ordinance that dealt with the fueling stations in the waterfront zone that the planning commission took up last year, so that will now go into an effect 30 days. Council was very appreciative of the planning commission's work on that topic, and also acknowledge we do have additional work to do on that related to the electric vehicles as an implementation measure once we finish the general plan. And then note, second of all, you should have a memo in front of you from Kathy regarding agenda item number 2. If you don't, please let us know and we will get that for you.
Okay, thank you.
Chair?
Yes.
Could I ask if Mr. Tilley could go in a little more detail on where the ordinance for the fueling stations landed? I know we talked about several different alternatives in the commission meeting.
Yes, in the end, they voted to make traditional fueling stations, including those using alternative fuels, a conditional use in the waterfront zone. So that would not preclude any type of fueling stations of hydrogen or any other matters that may come up in the interim. But as the commission decided, we did not act on anything related to electric vehicle charging stations at this time. That will be a separate topic that we'll need to take up once we commence a new zoning ordinance update.
Any other questions? Okay. Next item is disclosure of ex parte communications. Commissioners, is there any disclosure among the commissioners with members of the public or the applicant?
Madam Chair, I had communication with the person on item 2 and item 3, just members of the public on both of those.
Okay. Yes.
Madam Chair, I also had prior communications with the applicant on item number 3.
Prior communications, okay, thank you. Any others? No? Okay. And next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. I will accept a motion to approve the minutes from the February 4th commission meeting.
Second.
First, Commissioner Kelter, and second by Tumbler. Thank you. And all in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed? Okay, thank you. Next item is on the regular agenda is our consideration of proposed demolition of a 2-unit residential building located at 310, 312 East Street in the Historic District of the Washington Specific Plan. And we have a presentation by Ms. Ellen.
Good evening, Chair Guerrero and members of the commission. This item, as you mentioned, is a request for a demolition permit for a two-unit residence at 310, 312 East Street. That property is in the Washington Specific Plan area. It's also in the sub-area that's considered the historic district of the plan area. And due to the fact that it is in the historic district, there is a portion of the specific plan that requires Planning Commission to give approval for demolition of any buildings in the historic district. And this particular building, it was built approximately circa 1900. We were unable to establish the exact date of construction, but due to the architecture style, we pegged it at right around that time. The house was built without a foundation, and because of that, it leans noticeably to one side. If you stand across the street and look at it, you can actually see that it is leaning to one side. City staff went and met with the demolition contractors and did a walkthrough of the property. We observed when we looked in both the upper and the lower units that the floors slope severely. The second-story landing was very unsafe. Our building inspector did check and confirmed that it does indeed not have a foundation. And after we went and looked at the building, our building inspector actually went back and tagged the building as being unsafe to occupy due to the conditions that he discovered when he inspected it. Some of the issues that were found during the inspection were, as I mentioned, the lack of the foundation, the fact that portions of the first floor joists are actually in the dirt. The gas and the electrical hookups are unsafe in both units. The vertical and horizontal structural members are failing, and the exterior decks and stairs were failing and unsafe. The unit has since been boarded up to prevent entry due to the unsafe nature of it. City staff also requested that PG&E remove the electric and gas meters, and that has been done. In working on this project, staff did interface with the Historical Society here in town. Was one of the things that we did. We were very cognizant of the fact that this building is in an older part of town, and we wanted to have every opportunity for their feedback on the historic nature of this property. They did go out and look at the building and conducted their own research and came to the determination that other than the building's age, that there's really little historical significance to the building itself. And because of the dangerous condition of the building, we are recommending approval of the demo permit. Happy to answer any questions. Our city building official is here if you have any specific questions about the structural deficiencies that were found. And also, the building owner is here if you have any questions for him. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff before we open it up for public hearing? All right. At this time, I'll open it up for public hearing, and I have 3 requests to speak. And if anybody else would like to speak in this particular item, there are request to speak forms on the side. Submit them to Katie, please. And we request that you follow the 3-minute time limit. At this time, I'm calling up Mickey Fawcett.
My name is Mickey Fawcett, member of the West Sacramento Historical Society, and it could have been my comments that said there was no historical significance to the building, which it stands that way, except for It was interesting that there was no date of building or that you could find, which leads me to think that might have been moved there at some point in time, because the railroad tracks used to come down East Street way back in the 1890s. So I checked the censuses. In 1920, it did show a family at that address. Never heard the name before, as far as in the business people of Washington or Broderick. There's, that name didn't ring a bell with anything, so no historical significance, except for the fact it was one of those many houses that got moved, displaced, either because of the levee work or the railroad tracks moving back and forth over there. I do want to thank the city staff and the commission for getting us in the loop on this. There's a lot of history over there. Believe it or not, there's Gold Rush, there's Native American history, and we really need to get into that and pay close attention. One more thing there was a house down the street that when they were remodeling that about 5 or 6 years ago, took the wall boards off and everything, and there was notes when that house had been constructed, and people wrote about their history, and then it was stuffed with newspapers from the day. So that's why even in demolition, if you can, just keep an eye out for this stuff. Any way I can, I'll be over there watching from the street. And the other thing is, there's no foundation, probably nothing to be done. The house around the corner on Third Street, if anybody's went by there, I forget the exact address, it'd be between E and F. There actually are doing something to that house. I knew the family that lived there since the 1940s, and I don't think that they put any major improvements in that, but yet whoever bought that house is restoring it. And if you tear it down, you can at least build another building that looks somewhat like the other ones in the area. There's a house on 4th Street, somebody did that about 10 years ago. It looks just like the house next door. So anyway, I want to thank you.
Thank you. And the next request to speak is by Michelle Morrow. I'm sorry if I got your last name incorrect.
Thank you. I appreciate just a few minutes to address the commission. I have a little house next door to the house that's going to be demolished. So I'm just concerned with regards to safety and getting notice of when it's going to happen. I have another neighbor here, Henry, who lives across the street, and there's another neighbor very close to the house that's going to be demolished. I don't know what restrictions are going to be put on the permit with regards to making sure that, there's safety. It is kind of a narrow yard, and, we're a little nervous about how it's going to happen. We're very pleased it's going to happen, but nevertheless, we didn't know if there was going to be any notifications to the people that are nearby, what type of restrictions will be as far as safety. I don't know if there's anything that the staff could report to that, or if the owner's here. I was keeping an eye out for her, but.
Sure. Oh, legitimate concern. I think we'll ask staff after public hearing is closed. We'll find out.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And the next request to speak is Henry Puga. Okay.
Honorable Commission, I just want to add to what Michelle said, that in addition to the safety factor, it says here that being the house as old as it is, which is 80, 90 years old, and without it placing an age on myself, I've been around there long enough to know that there's nothing historical about that place. And I want, maybe this is not the place to ask, I'm sorry. However, because that place has been unlivable for a long time. The owner decided it was time to give it up. She was probably getting tired of it, not tired of collecting rent from there, but tired of being harassed. And because nothing that I heard tonight here mentions involvement by code enforcement, and they should have been the first ones to be there, okay? And they were not. They are not. Secondly, I'm concerned about when they start whacking away at this house, there's asbestos in there. I'm sure most of you know those old buildings have asbestos as well as termites, bed bugs, and everything else. So I'm just wondering whether any precautions have been taken to deal with this.
Okay.
Now, I agree with Michelle that I'm glad it's going down, you know. It should have gone down 50 years ago, okay? But that's neither here nor there. Anyway, that's my concern.
All right.
Because this notice says that the project is statutorily exempt from the California Environmental Protection. How did they decide that? Since there are asbestos in there, as well as other lead and whatever else.
All right.
So but don't let what I'm saying prolong the demolition. If you want to do it tonight, I have a flashlight at home that I can, hold up and do it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, are there any other requests to speak at this time? I'm seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing and open it up for the commissioners to ask any questions, and we'll start to my left. Commissioner Liebig, do you have any questions?
Sure, I actually only have one comment. That's a comment to staff and the West Sacramento Historical Society. I appreciate staff reaching out and your involvement in this project, and I agree with you that we certainly need to watch out for our historical assets in our community. Thank you.
I have just one comment. I just wanted to thank, was it Mr. Fawcett from the Historical Society? I really appreciated your insight in your presentation, and also thank you to the two community members. Your questions were, valuable and definitely gave me a good perspective, and I'm glad to hear that you're pleased that the building will hopefully be demolished.
Okay, all right, Commissioner Moore?
Kathy, I think you did a great job reaching out to the community. I think it's a great thing. And I think David was kind of chomping at the bit over there to tell us, I mean, if you're having a person come in and take down a building, I'm sure that all the concerns that were brought up have to be looked at when that's done.
We do have our chief building official here who could sort of elaborate on that process if the commission would like to hear that.
Yes, I think, would you like to?
Well, yeah, if it's just a short, somebody's gonna look at it, I mean, that's all we care about. And he has nothing better to do during the day. Stand across the street with Mickey and see what's going on,
Good evening, Commission. It's an honor to be here. It's been many years since I've been here, so I'm very happy to be here this evening. You've got the basics that's been presented. Kathy and David have done a great job. A building of this type is going to be demolished by a licensed and bonded demolition contractor. And that demolition contractor has industry standards that they have to follow. As we've heard, there are asbestos shingles that were manufactured during the 20s and 30s, and many buildings of that vintage have those. We've talked to Yolo Solano Air Quality Management District, and that building or duplexes of that type don't require special handling or reports. And that's just based on quantity. That's not saying that it's not important to handle it correctly. And every demolition contractor has protocol standards to handle and to handle the demolition correctly. And please, if you see something that concerns you, it should be taken down in a very meticulous way. They're not going to come in with a big piece of equipment. It's almost piece by piece, a building like that. You can call me, you can call David or Kathy, and I have inspectors that will be out and overseeing the process as well. It's unfortunate, I mean, I'm nostalgic by nature, to see a building like that go down. I've actually restored Victorians as a contractor, but that building's in really, really bad shape. And as the neighbors have said, I think it'll really help the neighborhood to have a new building go up in that spot.
The important part of that conversation being, though, that there is a process for what they were talking about.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions by commissioners? No? Okay.
Oh, not for the building official.
Not for the building official, okay, thank you.
Okay,
Thank
thanks a
you.
lot.
All right. Commissioner Stringfellow, no questions? No?
So I don't know if this is a question for Mr. Chili or possibly even the neighbors. Approximately how long has the building been unoccupied? Are we talking weeks, months, years? Looks like years, months, okay. So neighbors are reporting that it's been unoccupied for a little over a month. All right, so that's kind of neighbor report. I'm happy with that. So I just wanted to weigh in on a couple of things. First, echo our, my commissioners' comments for Mr. Fawcett. Thank you for always, weighing in on, you've weighed in on a number of items for this and the other commissions that I've served on, and so I appreciate the work of the Westack Historical Society. So a particular concern to me are two items. One is making sure that we're preserving our historic value, and I think we've done a really exhaustive job at examining that. The other concern that I have is preserving our stock of what's affordable housing. Now, here's the thing, I'm imagining that it's not a deed-restricted property. I'm also imagining that it was probably very low rent, and I'm a little bit concerned, I'm actually very concerned that, it's been in such a state of disrepair. I think that it's incumbent upon us as a city to make sure that we're providing housing for all income levels, and I think that we're really doing a good job of that. We have the building that's under construction on Tower Bridge Gateway will have rents that will be affordable to working families, and I think that that's critical. I do think that we need to, as a city, to be really vigilant, and so I was wondering if, I don't know if the building official or principal planner could weigh in a little bit about what the public can do if they have concerns about code violations, either for a property in their neighborhood or a property perhaps that even if they are renting from, that they are concerned that the owner is not maintaining it to a good enough standard. Is there like a website or a phone number they can call?
Phone number, website, the public stuff application, which is available online and also as an app on a smartphone. There's, numerous ways, and we do need assistance from, neighbors out there to be additional eyes, especially when it comes to substandard housing and other things that are of a dangerous nature.
Right. And I don't know if anyone's actually watching this commission meeting on TV or online, but if you are a renter and you're in this situation, there are resources available. We have resources for housing. We have resources for us to address property owners if you're in a situation like this. That being said, I too would love to see this building come down and have something beautiful in its place. So thank you, staff, and thank you for the neighbors for being here and voicing your concerns and for the work the staff has done. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And thank you very much, Mr. Fawcett. I appreciate your presentation and your background information and just what's happened out there in that area. Just, hearing about a house being taken down and just some of the history that you were able to find in there, I think is really valuable for our city. And preserving that and just, making sure that we're all aware and coming in here to testify about that. I really appreciate that. And to the neighbors, as reading this report, I also shared your concern, thinking about it coming down and thinking about, is it going to be safe? And I appreciate the planner's presentation, hearing about how this is going to be carefully taken care of, and hoping that as you were watching, and if there's any concerns, as you heard, please feel free to contact anyone, here, walk away with a telephone number that you think you can contact immediately to get any concerns addressed as things are moving forward. With that, if there are no other comments or questions, I will accept a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
Madam Chair, I move to approve staff recommendation.
I'll second.
All right. Approved by Commissioner Austin and seconded by Commissioner Liebig. All in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? No? All right, motion approved. Next item on the agenda is the continued public hearing regarding the Southport Deli Mart conditional use permit at 3360 Jefferson Boulevard. Commissioner Allen? Sorry. Ms. Ellen?
This item was continued from the February 4th hearing. It is a use permit application for the sale of hard liquor at the Southport Deli Mart, which is located at 3360 Jefferson Boulevard. The mini mart was originally opened in 1986 and predates the city. It's located in the C3 zone, so it's a legal non-conforming business. Staff, after the previous meeting, staff did conduct some additional research and has determined that the state Alcohol Beverage Control Division has actually is just waiting for the use permit to be approved to issue a liquor license for the mini mart. So they've done their research and they're actually happy with it and are just waiting to see what we are going to do on it. One of the other things we looked at was we researched how ABC actually determines what is considered an overconcentration. And they do that based on census tracts. So for the census tract that the market is located in, they are actually allowed for off-sale licenses in that census tract. There's currently only one, the Tower Mart. So it would not create an overconcentration if the second one was approved. Also, we met with the applicant's representative last week, and they actually, in trying to demonstrate how the mini market has been a good citizen in the community, they presented us with a letter that they actually received from ABC. ABC conducted a sting operation last summer at their facility and sent in someone under 21 who attempted to buy beer or wine, and they were carded and refused. So the owners of the mini market are definitely trying to play within the rules and be good neighbors in the community. This concludes my presentation. If you have additional questions, we're happy to answer them. The owner is here, their representative is here, and this concludes my presentation.
Thank you. And are there any questions by the commissioners to staff at this time? Go ahead.
I think my question is actually to the applicant.
Is it? Okay.
Yes.
All right, well, I have the applicant's representative come up at this time.
Did we open the
Open the
public
pub,
hearing?
and we'll open it up for a public hearing.
Thank you. My name is JP Singh, and I think we met on the last meeting, and I'm happy to answer any question commissioners may have.
And Commissioner Liebig, no questions? Any questions this side?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. One quick question. I noticed that there is explicitly no expansion being proposed for the store, but yet you're going to carry a larger inventory, is that right?
No, actually, it's not a large inventory. I think we met with the staff and show them in the picture earlier view where we're gonna put the liquor, and it's behind the sales counter is a small area, because we don't wanna call it as a liquor store, it's a convenience store. We are extending a convenience to the community. So we're not gonna add a major inventory, that's why we don't need expansion of the store itself.
Thank you.
Commissioner Tumlin, you have a question?
Yeah, so I appreciate that you worked with the staff, and a lot of the questions that we had last time were answered very clearly within the paperwork. I did just have one question. There was a question I had last time that wasn't directly addressed, and my question was, do you have any intention of changing the hours of operation with having the liquor license now? So in the paperwork, it says that in the staff report, it says that you're currently open until 9 p.m.
We're going to maintain the same hours.
Okay.
It will be the same, 7:30 to 9.
You know, my real concern though is that right now, the other question I had, which is, do you have any overflow from the bar? And if you close at 9 PM, it makes sense that you wouldn't have that.
Correct.
But if you remain open until, you know, say midnight, then I feel like you're gonna have people walking on Jefferson, going to your store, because, not that it has anything to do with you and your, you know, your safety precautions, just because people kind of do that when they leave a bar. So I was just kind of worried about general safety of the public, because we don't want people walking around Jefferson.
Well, it's a neighborhood store, and we
Right.
just cater to the people who comes from after work and up to 8, 9. And after that, it's not enough customer coming in that we need to open it up. It's not economical for us to keep it open, and we don't want to cater to just the liquor part of the business to promote. So you want to maintain the same status quo, and just want to serve the community with the more options, and that's where we want to make the same, no expansion, just small inventory to cater the customer so we can stay in business.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on my right? Commissioner Moore?
I have no questions for Mr. Singh, because I'm afraid he'll talk all night. But I think it's only fair that, you know, you're just trying to diversify the store a little bit. Is that not right? Just add a little bit of an additional thing that's been asked for in the community.
Yeah,
that what you
that's what
said
we're
last
trying
time?
to do. And actually, we just, when we apply for the license, actually, we got the license as the more license opened by the ABC, and we applied for it. It's like a lottery, you know, we got it. And we just want to add to the community convenience of adding it in terms of retaining the customers, so they don't have to go other places just for the need of liquor, and we lose the business that they would have provided us anyway in the meantime.
Thank you.
So, thank you for coming back again, first off, and appreciate your willingness to be so open and answering questions. I had a past life in which I worked in the hotel and restaurant industry, and I've probably purchased more alcohol than I can care to imagine. And the reason I bring that up is because one of the things you haven't touched on that I'd be really interested in hearing tonight is more about what your plans are for such a small space in carrying products that's going to meet the needs of your customers. So if you could share any information on both what you're looking to carry as far as size, quantity, and format, I would be interested in knowing that for such a small space, because that says a lot about what type of customer you're going to be catering to, and given you've had customer demand, I think we should hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, we can relate to the wine and beer inventory that we carry now, and it's a small portion of our refrigerator that we keep the beer and wine. So based on the customer purchases, the amount of customer they pay, the purchase every time they come in, the ticket amount, and the feel for it, I think standing here today, I cannot project in 6 months or a year how much that will be. We just go by the feel of the customer base. We're going to start with a low inventory, and I don't think it's going to convert into a so-called liquor store. We're just adding a few items, and to be honest with you, it will start very low, because I don't want to dump a lot of money into the inventory carrying it. And my gut feeling is we just need to add the shelf size that I put it in your attachment that you have. And that will be sufficient in terms of the ratio-wise that we have right now, beer to the other grocery that we carry in a store.
Could you be any more specific about either the brands or types of liquor you're looking at, or the sizes in particular? Because I'll be very candid, the size is a concern for me, and how that may impact the public comfort and convenience, as well as public health and general welfare and safety.
I think we'll sit back with the distributor, you know, for this size, what's the best combination of the liquor? I'm not as versatile in the brands that you may be. I just know one or two that I drink.
No, I appreciate. I'm not. So I think, you know, for me, you know, I think part of the line of dialogue that's taken place between both meetings has been that there's a need between your customer base, which is mostly folks who live in the immediate area, to provide liquor beverages.
Correct.
And so what I'm trying to understand more is the type of products that you'll actually have in stock and have in shelf. Are they going to cater to those needs? Or are they going to be smaller format bottles that may be grab-and-go type of items that may not be catering to that segment?
Well, they will be sold as individual bottles because they're not packed like 6-pack or 12-pack. But to your question, they will be sizes half gallon, 1 gallon, or 375. Those, I think, we will start with a very minimal, may not even fill up the shelf size because of the demand of the customer, how that plays out. Like I said, we're going to sit down with the distributor and try to gauge from there, that this type of store or this type of beer and wine that they're selling us, how much that inventory should play out. And like I said, we don't want to convert this into a liquor store, quote unquote. It's just a convenience store with a beer, wine, and added liquor to it. And we are dedicating the area behind the counter to fill up the shelf for I think hit and trial will go by that. By standing here, I cannot exactly tell you that I will carry so many types of it or so many sizes or so many dollar amount that we are.
That's fair, I appreciate that. In terms of the license, did you have to go through a public noticing
Yeah.
requirement?
Yeah,
And so
we did all that.
that period's already completed and been
Everything is
finished?
done, and you have a letter from ABC. All the formalities have been done, and they're just waiting for the city to issue a conditional permit, and so we'll be in the business.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Commissioner Oster? No questions. All right, I think my fellow commissioners covered all the questions and, that I was thinking about, and I appreciate Commissioner Sternfeld's concerns related to what prompted it and the space and size of the alcohol. And if I wanted to ask if, you were approached, if there was a customer and you were approached by the city staff because of a customer complaint, of a concern, can you help me to understand how you would handle that situation? Say, for example, somewhere down the road, something happened and they wanted to address it. I know you're neighborly, but I just want to get a feel for, how you would work it out if there was a concern that was raised.
We'll try to work it out amicably, try to sit down and what the concern is, what we can do, or city staff, what we can get advice from them, how to handle that. I think we are pro to work with the community. We are the part of the community, and
Right.
we want to stay that way.
Good. Well, and I think you've been here so long already and grown with the community. I think you have a really good sense as to what the community is interested in, and your expansion, I think, is a part of that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? No? All right, good. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate
you.
your presentation and answering the questions. Okay. And at this time, I'll close the public hearing and see if there are any additional questions to staff by the commissioners. Any staff comments? No? Okay. Well, I will accept a motion for this item.
Chair, are we going to have any public discussion or discussion amongst our commissioners before you
Yes, we can have a
request a
discussion
motion?
amongst the commissioners, of course. That would be fine. We can have a discussion either before a motion is taken, and if we're interested in amending the motion, or we can have it after a motion. So whichever way you feel you would like to take this. It seems like you have a question, or you wanted to say something.
Well, So I think I want to clarify some of my questions and where I was going from. From viewing the pictures and the layout, it's a very small area. So you have to make product selections about what you're going to carry and how much and what size. And I think that small format bottles in particular cater to a very different crowd of users than larger format bottles. And with a limited space, I think it's worth considering from a public safety standpoint, are the products being sold in this small space going to be targeted towards a community or an area or patrons who are more likely to have challenges using or abusing alcohol or even underage drinking. And so my questions around those areas were really specifically targeted to understanding, but have a better understanding of what the target audience is for the products. given the limited space. So I want to throw that out there in, I guess, more in terms of getting any other feedback or discussion on it.
So let me ask you this, because I'm kind of catching on to what you're saying. Are you saying that the little pint bottles would be one size and then the
So I could, I mean, I think part of the question is, 3 shelves of liter bottles, that same things that any one of us would buy in a Nugget or another store, would be a very different setup than 5 rows of fifths of vodka, which are the smaller ones, and airplane bottles. And so we haven't gotten an indication from the applicant as to, is there a direction to have diversity in the stock? Are we targeting a specific size? And I think those things say quite a bit about, the target audience for those products. And I just want to be thoughtful about what that looks like before we make a decision saying that we think it's in the best interest of the public health, public convenience, and public safety.
I think, and it'd be fair, even if you want to reopen the public hearing and allow JP to come back up. But what your comment is, it would be, if you're going to have those little tiny pints that you can stick in your pocket, and you could have 100 of them on the shelf, that may not be what we're thinking about, where the larger bottles are what people normally buy to take home and have at home. So is that kind of what we're asking? I don't think, JP, you understood exactly what the question was.
And if I can interject a little bit, I'm actually not sure we can make that determination either. We're here, it's a use permit, so it's to
Correct.
allow it or to not. Where I kind of got peace of mind is the location of the alcohol being behind the counter.
Right.
It's going to cut down on pickpockets, first of all, and that's, I think, might actually dissuade who you might be thinking about, and discourage, theft for one thing, but wrong kind of crowd coming in. So, and that was my biggest concern with this as well, is you want to keep this a reputable establishment.
So the last time we had this discussion, I think at our last commission meeting, I brought up the issue of, it would be possible for us to add a condition of some sort of time limit that we can revisit this after a year or 3 years. Because I agree, I mean, we can have the applicants come up here again. It may be difficult for even them to determine who they're going to be selling to. So I would be very comfortable approving the use permit, but putting something where we reevaluated it to see, and I think, I don't know if staff can weigh in on this, but asking for a report back of maybe a picture of the display and, or a self-report of what their inventory is, those kinds of things is one way to address.
I don't know that we've ever put a time limit. You can have a permit for a year. I think that you might be able to put a condition in there that if we get a multiple complaints from the store, that we might be able to revisit it. But I don't think you can say you can have this may be when the attorney wants to go, hello, down there. But
We keep looking over at staff.
I'm not sure that we could put a time limit out there and say, we can come back in 3 years. You have a permit, but it's only for 3 years, and then we got to revisit it again. You might be able to say something if they had a multiple complaints or calls by the police department, we might be able to revisit it, but I'm not sure.
That's a
I'm
good
not making
question
that call.
For staff, yeah.
And I do want to add that I did, in between visit Tower Mart and wanted to see what their stock looked like. And it's a pretty good stock of, I think, 2 rows of all sizes of alcohol and of all brands. Probably not the higher end brands, but, and I'm not all savvy in all the higher end brands, but just, they've got a really big stock. So, and it is going to be behind the counter. I think if somebody had intentions of taking something smaller and have it accessible, and maybe even pickpocket, they may end up in Tower Mart first, before they
Try to
hit
go
the demo.
behind the counter and steal it, yeah.
Exactly. I think it's just access, oversight. I think that, and then, just goodwill goes a long way for me when you have a business owner here who's, has the history and has done a great job in passing some of the tests that the police department have worked through, I think, a lot of, and some other people have not passed, by the way. It could be a slight oversight, but just by the person who's on the counter not asking for ID, just they happen to forget, and that's when they get charged, as I sit on the neighborhood court. So I've seen that. But just thinking about that, and they've already got the approval from ABC. I'm not sure what the rules are with not the approval, sorry, they need the conditional use permit, but they're waiting for that, and I want to see what the interaction is if we did set a time limit as well, and that, in the interaction with them. So that's the question for staff as well.
If I could, Chair Guerrero, address some of the comments and the questions that were raised by the commission. First, while I haven't researched whether the city can actually specify the volume or the size of the alcohol that's being sold at this site, I do know that ABC has very specific and detailed regulations that probably covers a lot of that. So I would be a little bit uncomfortable having any kind of condition which limits the size. However, the commission does have broad jurisdiction in determining whether or not finding number 2 of the CUP can be met, and that is whether the requested use is essential or desirable to the public comfort and convenience. And in that vein, it is true that the commission wants to ensure that granting a conditional use permit for this type of use does not exacerbate any potential criminal activity or issues at that site, but rather enhances an amenity for the community there. So in that line of thought, the commission has a couple of options. You can actually have a time limit tied to the conditional use permit, which would require the commission to revisit this at the expiration to see whether or not finding number 2 has and can continue to be met. Alternatively, you can have a specific condition of approval that states something along the lines of if there are X number of complaints in any given year, then the conditional use permit is subject to revocation. However, in either scenario, I do want to caution this commission that we need to make sure that we're treating all users the same way, and we don't want to be imposing any kind of conditions on this use that we might not be doing for our other uses. So as long as this commission can narrowly tailor it to have a link to number 2, then it's okay, but that would be the prerequisite.
Which brings you back to the fact that we've never done anything like that in the past anywhere. I mean, but don't, David, if we had, the police department suddenly got a call every day out to that, don't we have the right to bring this back and look at it?
If that would be under a revocation scenario, and the most common way that would be if they were not following one of the conditions that is on the particular use permit. In that scenario, ABC may even have more authority than us, and if
Right.
ABC were to pull a license, this use permit is sort of moot. We would probably try to do a revocation at that time if there were problems. So, but the time limit thing we've done, on various things over the years, but even without that, the conditions remain in place essentially as long as the business is operating. And so if there's any problem at any point in the future where it appears that they're not following the conditions, we can bring it back here for a potential revocation.
And that goes back to condition number 2, is it good for the community? And if we're having a bunch of problems, we would have the right to bring it back before the commission.
Yeah, under the context of a potential revocation, absolutely.
Yes.
So I want to build upon that. So I'll just say, I'm absolutely intending to approve, I personally am leaning towards approving the request for the use permit. I just want to make sure that the commission's entirely comfortable. So I think that one way that we can kind of address this is that the adjacency issue, right? So it's adjacent to, you know, I guess it's a sports bar or something. And I do think that we have raised concerns that a person could, for example, be cut off by the bartender and walk across the parking lot and purchase their own alcohol. And I think that that's a valid concern. I think that could happen. And so I think, you know, I think that I'm personally comfortable approving this use permit. If there continues to be some discomfort on this commission, I think that one of the things that we could do is build in a component, like staff has indicated, where there's a condition, and I like maybe rather than a time limit, that if there are some negative consequences that are arising from this, something that's a unique situation, and I do think that the location of it warrants it being slightly different than the other locations in Southport. I think that's one way that we can examine this.
If I can, I'm sorry, if I can clarify one other point that I made and that Mr. Tilley was also expanding on. ABC does have a very robust schedule of penalties, and they're contained in the Business and Professions Code. And they are, you know, if a licensee violates any number of these provisions, they're subject to suspension or possible revocation. And these run the gamut from things, as you can imagine, sale of alcohol to persons under 21 years of age, or allowing persons under the age of 21 to be in the liquor area, to contaminated bottles, substitution of brands, employees accepting alcoholic drinks, sale to purchase between retailers. There are so many specific provisions in the Business and Professions Code that they may actually encompass some of the concerns that the commission has already.
I also want to amend what I just said. I looked at this list again. It's Target, Nugget, Rocco Wine and Spirits, and Tower Mart. And actually, the Wine and Spirits, I believe, is across the parking lot from the Streets of London bar. So that's,
Right.
unfortunately, it's actually very similar to the situation, so.
Yes, Commissioner Kelter.
A question for staff. Is there some feasible way that we could periodically, perhaps annually or on some other schedule, have some information either from ABC or Wessac PD or some combination to keep us cognizant of the situation with regard to police calls and enforcement actions of institutions in the city that have permits from the city?
Well, certainly the police information is available. They publish a lot of those statistics just on their website. ABC publishes daily reports of current licensees and also those that are in their status, whether they're active or suspended. So a lot of that information is readily available, and I certainly don't mind providing that to the Planning Commission, you know, periodically, you know, on this one as it may move forward.
So why couldn't you put a condition that 1 year from now, you'll provide us with a report from ABC and the police department as to what happened out there? And if we think it's something serious enough, we could review it.
Actually, I'd be interested in seeing for all licensees, not just this one.
It'd be great, but that'll give David something to do on his spare time. You know, because there's a number of stores, you know, now you're talking about Rayleigh's, you're talking about Safeway, and you're talking about everything.
We have over 50 licensed off-sale locations in town when you include the beer and wine, you know, component, so it is quite a few.
I do have a concern that that's putting a large burden on our staff, who carries a heavy load for this city.
Yeah, but in his spare time, you know.
Of course.
No, I mean, if somebody's really concerned, I mean, these people have proven that they're doing a good job out there. You have an opportunity to go back if you really want to look at it, if we hear something's going on. I mean, I don't see why we want to put in an additional condition. But if we do, that might be a way of doing it, and just ask staff to review this one applicant a year from today and make sure that it's going well.
So I've sat back and enjoyed the conversation since I started this dialogue off with a bang. I want to, here's where I'm coming from, and, you know, if we're at a point where we even need to open the public hearing to get clarity on this, I'd be totally okay with that. I have a hard time understanding how a business who wants to sell a new product would go through the process of applying for permits and coming before us and not have any idea of what they want to sell. And so there's a huge difference to me in both perception and target audience when you have 5 rows of fifths of liquor and airplane bottles versus a broad selection like all of the other permitted applicants have of both type, quantity, size, and value in this case. And while I appreciate many of my commissioners' concerns that the location of this being so far down in Southport makes it different than others, that area is about to start building up. And I think that we need to be cognizant of the decision to grant a conditional use permit at this location is one that will be there for as long as this operation's in existence. And so my concern is not knowing anything about what the applicant plans to do there in terms of sales. There's a very big difference in comfort level for me between following a business model like the other stores in town that offer liquor beverages and some other models that I could easily see fitting into that space, simply because the small amount of space that's being set aside for the project has no reflection on the applicant or their desire to have additional products. What I just see is a very small space, which means decisions will be made about the types of products you will carry. And there's certainly data out there that shows that smaller format bottles in particular often end up in the hands of folks that shouldn't have them and are often target certain parts of the community that are already disadvantaged. And so I think that we need to be thoughtful about the extent, and I'm happy to hear more from the applicant on, you know, what is the business plan for adding this new product line to your business, and is it a wide array of products, or is it is it 4 rows of fifths? And I think that's a fair question for us to ask, because to me, that is the difference between being comfortable with the condition, with item 2, and being uncomfortable with it. And I think that I need to hear from the applicant personally to understand what the intention is for selling liquor products at the store.
Would the applicant be interested in, open it up for public hearing for response among all the questions that have been coming up, ideas, and if you can respond to the ideas that we are recommending to make some changes here.
Actually, you know, I hear what you're saying, but like I said, we will work with a small inventory, small in the sense where we can afford, because liquor is very expensive to carry. And we are not a big store compared to Tower Mart or Rocco Wine. They have the whole store dedicated to that, or big portion of the Tower Mart. We're not going to have that much. And standing here, and I never thought from that point of view to prepare myself to answer the question you are asking. It's just the line we are adding, and we go by, like I said, hit and trial and the input from the distributor, and we may end up ordering this stuff that never sell, or the one we short, and it sell in week before the new supply comes in. I think that's why regular stores have the items for sale or half amount, because if everybody goes by hit and trial. I go to Lowe's all the time. They have a bucket filled up in the front. They say half the sale, because everybody, even those are professional in that, with the big wig bigs and the MBAs and marketing people which order their inventory can goof up. We are just a small one-man show. We just go by what the community wants, and hit and trial, we can do that. By the space is because we don't gonna carry 1 gallon, 2 gallon bottles, because the people go buy from Costco or where the deals are. We're gonna be starting with a gallon, a half gallon or small, and standing here, to be honest with you, I cannot tell you which shelf we're gonna have, which kind, or how many varieties we're gonna have. It's just what the customer wants, and like I said, we may end up ordering some stuff that sits on the shelf for a year and collect the dust, and some would sell more, and we adjust accordingly. That's the best I can say and then we don't wanna be making this big, huge inventory or promotional on that say people who buy one, get one free or something to come into that. We're just trying to add more convenience, and like I said, by gauging how many people come in for the beer and wine, And that ratio, people gonna be asking for the liquor, and we want to dedicate the small portion for that. And we can't afford to have the whole store turned into a liquor store, and we don't want to do that because we have people coming in for the other necessary stuff that we sell now, and we have to cut down on that to increase the inventory, and that may hurt us, the people what we serve for. And to your point on we want to do that so the customer, we have a control on where the liquor is. Not anybody can walk in and pick up or steal or have kids coming in and access to looking at that. That's the best I can say. But I can assure you, we're trying to be a good neighborhood store, and to the point that customer can walk from the next bar and they refuse, the barman refuse the customer if he can see he cannot handle more liquor or he's straddling or some. So when you walk there, and that's the one, the training we did with the police department that they call it a team. You know, if you can see the customer is drunk or something, don't serve liquor to that. That's a part of the training and the certificate we got from the police. And the ABC, like the attorney said, that they have a lot of conditions that we have to meet. They said with us, hey, you need to do ABC, do this. You know, we can't. That's the first thing, not to serve the underage and not to serve the person who is not in a good condition. You can make the best judgment of that. So, having said, we try to do the best we can to maintain the clean store and image and serve the community to their needs and be a good neighborhood store in the community.
And so there were a few conditions that I heard raised, you know, as far as an expiration of the time. Did you want to respond to that? Did you have any thoughts about that?
I think attorney explained that those conditions are already directly or indirectly built in by the virtue of ABC issuing the license. And the same thing, the police, when the police report comes and there is a nuisance at the store or we sell underage or something, that report, police send it to ABC. So, and then they have the power to suspend the license or revoke the license. And we are happy to comply with the conditions that on top of that you want to impose, because we are not intent on doing anything extraordinary by getting this approval for the use permit.
Okay. And ABC, you needed approval for sale of your other alcoholic beverages, correct? Do you have wine and beer at this time?
Yeah, it's already have
So
that.
you have a history with ABC,
Yeah,
where you have a record that demonstrates you can continue to expand on that.
Correct, like we give a letter to the staff that for underage sting operation that they do, and with the ABC and police, Westsec PD do together. And we passed that, and then we also are part of the new initiative that Westsec PD has to educate the liquor licensees what to do's and don'ts they want to do in the community, being a license holder. And we have that done too.
Yeah, that's good. Okay. Well, if there are no questions, then from any of the commissioners at this time? No other comments? That would be great. Thank you. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. And I am now closing the public hearing. And I wanted to build a little bit on Commissioner Kelter's request. We may not be able to get all the answers from ABC, but maybe from the sting operation that they do jointly with ABC. Maybe we can get a report because that's more, they're proactive in checking to see which entities that are selling liquor are, and it could be just alcohol and wine too, so it's kind of expanding even beyond that are, if that's public information that we can have, maybe have that in a future meeting?
Yeah, I don't know the frequency of those operations that the police does, but to the extent that information is a matter of public record, I certainly don't mind forwarding it to the commission when it becomes available.
Okay. Well, I think we're okay now with all the discussion at this point. Any other discussion? Then I think we can move next to,
I make a motion that we approve the staff's recommended action.
I second.
moved by Commissioner Moore, and second by Commissioner All in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? No? Unanimously approved. Thank you.
Any interested party may appeal the decision of the planning commission in this matter to the city council by filing a written appeal with the city clerk within 15 days of tonight's action, and that appeal must be accompanied by the appropriate filing fee.
Okay, next item on the agenda is an informational update on recent legislation affecting planning. And we have a presentation by Mr. Tilley.
Yes, first of all, I'd like to give credit for Junior Planner Seamus Laffey on my staff for putting all this material together tonight. And so I'm going to give you a summary of what's in here and have a quick PowerPoint for each item, and I'll ask Katie to sort of advance the slides. We wanted to provide as much training as we can for planning commissioners, and many of the conferences and things that come up are often, I know, during the week and are difficult for many of you to get to. So this time, since there's been a few very substantive bills that have come to pass lately, I wanted to give you a brief update on 3 of them, and focusing on sort of what they mean, to your role as the decision makers on projects. So the first one is a very relevant one, is AB 57. This is a bill that's now in effect as of this year, and it really largely implements a lot of FCC regulations that have come down on cell towers. Essentially, this is established and formalizes what we call the shot clock for both new cell tower projects and also for co-locations. These are projects that we do at least a couple of these each year. They are often challenging projects for a variety of reasons, but now we have some very strict limits on how much time we can take on them, on top of the fact that we're already fairly limited as it is on what our discretion is related to cell towers. So essentially, we have 150 days for a new cell tower from scratch and 90 days for co-locations. The new cell tower ones are most critical. Those are the ones that are most commonly come before the Planning Commission. And, we have a couple that have been pending, and we've, worked on a couple of big ones over the past, few years. And so what this means is that, the pressure really is on staff to bring these, to do what we need to do on these, to get them before the Planning Commission, to allow, ample time for your consideration of these projects, so that, the shot clock is not, ticking all the way down, when we bring it before you. But that, as we'll talk about when we get to one of the next bills, this may be challenging on some projects, depending on where they're located and what level of environmental review they will require. So this is one that'll be coming forward, and it'll be very important for us to be prepared to act on these projects, because if we don't act and impose the conditions that we typically would want on these, or not approve them, should that case be, the shot clock expires, time is up. And so we'll lose essentially our chance at that point in time. So we will be doing what we can to bring these forward to you with ample time for your review. But again, depending on if they're controversial, if they have a complex environmental review, some of those shot clock dates were going to be tight. So we will want to make sure that we will always note where we are in the shot clock when it comes to these projects that are coming before you. But we definitely will need to be prepared to act on some of these if we're getting close on the shot clock time period. And 150 days does sound like a lot, but with potentially several months of environmental review, public noticing, that time frame can really start to shrink. So hopefully this won't be an issue, but it certainly is possible, and we sort of wanted to bring this to your attention, going forward.
Mr. Tilley?
Yes.
I apologize for interrupting, but can you speak to how this change may impact the item we heard in December that was held over?
Our time is running on that one, and right now, if they elect to proceed with that project, we are planning to bring it back at our next meeting, because our time is real short on that one. Based on, we heard it back in December. Here, they have been doing their diligence based on what the Planning Commission requested them to do. That's taken a little while, and so our time is running on that one. So we anticipate bringing that one back very soon. We have requested a tolling agreement from them to suspend that clock ticking. Thus far, we have not received that from them. But that may still, if that may still occur, but otherwise, for now, we're preparing to bring that at your next meeting.
Thank you.
So I want, we can go, I would like to perhaps take questions on each item, and then we'll move on to the next one. So unless there's any other questions on this, Commissioner, did I see?
Go ahead.
Just a couple. Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the constraints that staff is going to be put on, and also appreciate the creativity that our staff often shows in getting through these types of projects, and just thinking through the process. If you know an application is incomplete, and typically we say stamp something incomplete and then start working with the applicant once it's complete, perhaps we can do something like shift that around, work with the applicant, and then once they're ready with a complete package, stamp their initial one incomplete to start the clock over, as an example.
Yeah, I do think we will need to work on some additional stuff into our wireless policy to assist us in this regard, by particularly what it means to be complete in this, and there's some other triggers that come with completeness, but certainly the intent here, you know, for this, with these bills, is to keep these projects moving, and they have considerable, and like no other thing that I can think of that we work on, have so much of our discretion been taken away at the state and or federal level on this particular topic. As an aside, internally, we have been considering whether or not do we even need to be in the use permit business for these, you know, anymore, rather than establishing better design criteria into the wireless policy. It's a notion we've been kicking around in staff, but we're between being limited to aesthetics already and then this on top of it. I mean, we're so far kind of in a corner. Are we gaining much by doing use permits for many of these? So it's a sort of philosophical thing right now. We may bring that up at a future commission meeting and as part of the wireless policy. But it will be a challenge on some of these time limits. Because these are independent of any other requirements like CEQA, you know, for example, and public noticing and things like that.
So if you made a mistake and it suddenly became 151 days, there'd be nothing we could say. They could just go out and start building.
What this bill does is it essentially shifts the onus from the applicant to the city to make the claim that this isn't ready to move forward. So under that scenario, on the 151st day, the applicant would likely say that the shot clock has expired and they can move forward, and that's what they're planning on doing. They'll publish their notices, and then the city would have to sue the applicant. So before this legislation, the applicant would have to sue the city and have a court direct the city to process the application.
Yeah, so this
So
is not
our-
where we want to be.
So our best avenue to do anything is to review our cell tower criteria.
Yeah,
So-
we probably need to work on that a little more for what we did a couple of years ago. And I'm thinking that we may bring some of these projects, especially ones where we think they may be somewhat controversial or within residential, you know, close to residential. We may bring some of those to the planning commission a little earlier than we normally would in a workshop basis, to try to get your input a little earlier, so that we save a little time on the back end and allow for a comfortable hearing process. Because as you know, many times, you know, some issues come up right at the hearing that are raised by members of the community that, you know, none of us anticipate, and we need a little more time. So our goal would always be to keep some time in our back pocket. You know,
But our goal's got to be to go back and review our policy so that we're trying to put everything into it that we can, that we're allowed to do.
Yeah, that's the other half of it I think we definitely need to work on. So unless are there any other questions on this item, we'll move on to our next
We'll go on to our next one.
topic of substance. This is kind of a biggie. That is, we're all getting our arms around and what it means to us. This is the Medical Marijuana Regulation and Safety Act, which is really comprised of 3 separate bills where the state is essentially finally setting up a formal regulatory system for medical marijuana, which we all know has been legal under some basis for probably about 10 years now, approximately, since those first couple of bills were passed. So this is finally, formalizing it right now, which right now it's very difficult because there is little to no oversight, and we have struggled even in our community on what to do with this, especially related to cultivation, dispensaries, et cetera. It's sort of been all over the map. So this new state system, which is going to establish a new state agency, is going to issue various types of licenses, all related to in businesses directly and indirectly related to medical marijuana, including cultivation, labs, distributors, and et cetera. Vertical integration, which is sort of how it works now, is no longer going to be allowed. The businesses involved in different aspects of medical marijuana will need to be separate, which is a similar model to how alcohol is regulated, where you have a manufacturer is one business, a distributor is another business, then retailers are then a third business, and they're at somewhat, arm's length, from each other. Our complete local authority, does remain intact. We don't have to do anything under this, but this is establishing that framework. So currently, we prohibit dispensaries completely. That's been on the books for a number of years now. And for the last couple of years, we've had an outdoor cultivation ban. And cultivation in our community is currently limited to, personal use in a residence, and there's an administrative permit for that. It was established a few years ago after we got a lot of nuisance complaints about growing and some of the odors that were associated with that. So Katie, can you flip the next slide, please? So any of these businesses do need state permission and city permission. We may continue to prohibit marijuana sales as we do now. And we, again, as I mentioned, we do have the cultivation permit ordinance, and dispensaries are not permitted. So this is new, but we wanted to bring it to your attention because it's certainly possible that, some matters related to this, may come before the commission here this year. And there's a lot more detail in the League of Cities document that we attached to your staff report, but this is sort of a big one, and everyone is trying to get their arms around what all these bills mean in the real world. So I'm happy to entertain any questions about this topic.
But right now, what we've done, none of that changes.
Correct.
The only thing is, they're talking about having a big facility that would grow marijuana for medical purposes.
We are not entertaining any cultivation changes or businesses or
Right.
changes
So
to our
right now,
ordinance.
We're still okay. We still control what's going on.
Yeah, we still
As best we can.
still prohibit cultivation other than the personal use limited, to those persons that have the card and are otherwise authorized to do so. That doesn't change. So this one is something in many ways we have kind of been looking for because, this has been all over the map, and everyone was afraid that they would be sort of become the test case for this, and each local jurisdiction was addressing these topics, and we struggled here quite a bit during the dispensary discussions several years ago. So hopefully this will help, formalize how this has been, because it has been a little Wild West since those first couple of bills were passed.
David, is there any interest for involvement by the county to address this, through an ordinance or anything like that?
I'm not familiar what if anything, the county is doing at this time. It is something we can try to find out. There was a big rush before March 1st, and I believe there was another bill passed that the governor, changed that deadline, but there was, a lot of people were in a mad scramble.
Right. Okay. And, given that there are many cities, even our neighbors, are interested in making some changes, have you sensed that there's interest to do anything here in West Sacramento by any folks interested in expanding growth or?
We have received one application
Okay.
that would be involved in the distribution
Distribution, okay.
side of this, so that is something that we are working on currently, so received fairly recently.
Okay. If you have any advice on where we can go to learn more about it and just gather our knowledge
I think,
about
yeah,
that,
I
that
think,
would be,
I think the lead document is a great place to start, it's sort of a summary, and there's links in there if you want to read the entire bill.
okay.
But these are some good summaries, and I'm sure there are others that are out there as well, but this is the one we had on our hand. It is complicated, but the summary of it is that, we fully retain our local discretion, on all things medical marijuana going forward.
Okay, thank you.
So if there's nothing else on marijuana, I'd like to close on another one that's very important that we're working with, and that's AB 52. This is a bill that actually amended CEQA, and I'll spare you a lot of the gory details on it, but suffice to say that this is meaningful for the Planning Commission because it establishes a new resource section in CEQA that we need to evaluate in our environmental document called Tribal Cultural Resources, which, even though we've always looked at cultural resources, this really expands that to, quite another level. There are many things that we need to be doing now, working directly with the tribes that will be upfront, but what's important for this is that this will take some time on projects. The tribes are, getting used to this as well. Their territories are very large, and they're receiving a lot of project requests, from every city, county, state agency, special district, you name it. And so we're all working together on this, but this is important. Is we have to do this consultation process with the tribes on our projects, and this would be any project really with a negative declaration or higher. And so there's going to be a lot of projects that this will be subject to, even projects that are relatively small. So we will be doing the consultation and with the goal of gathering information that the tribes have about potential tribal cultural resources on the project site or in the vicinity. And then we'll need to be considering that in our environmental documents. This will definitely make some projects take longer. And part of what this rail is circling back to the cell tower project item, the 150 days does not stop for any type of time it takes for doing any tribal consultation. So for those ones that need, that's one we're really concerned about for any of those cell towers that we need to do a environmental review on. Our goal would be to reach a satisfactory conclusion with the tribes on any projects that are brought forward, and then so that the projects can then proceed to Planning Commission for a final decision. There's no even though there's a time limit on how long the tribes have to respond to our consultation request, and there's a time limit on when we have to initiate consultation with them. There's no formal limit on time limit as to when consultation will conclude. So since this is new, we don't have a lot of practical experience yet, but thus far, these things are taking at least a few months. So for what's the take-home message for the Planning Commission is that tribal cultural resources, which is a much broader category of resources, you'll be seeing in environmental documents, and that we'll want to be memorializing the consultation milestones, if you will, as part of our decision so that they're part of the record, when we go forward. Because as lead agency, we retain our discretion here, but the tribes do have a lot more authority up front than they've ever had previously on these resources. And we are used to many things in these documents, but this is sort of a new level that we'll be getting to. And there are multiple tribes that we have to do consultations with, and those consultations, will likely be, separate as well. So most of this work will be upfront and be done by staff, but there will be some new stuff related to it coming to you. And some projects, if you hear about them, out there, they may be taking a little bit longer than maybe what you might expect because, we need to do this new process now. So were there any questions about this particular bill?
Yeah, Mr. Till, I got a couple questions. The first is, what about existing projects that who've gone through this process? Are they sort of grandfathered? We have some major projects that have already done their CEQA. Are they sort of grandfathered in?
Yeah, this was
Okay.
only applying since July 1st, 2015. So really, anything that basically wasn't already approved by then, we need to do AB 52 on, and it's possible that additional tribes could become part of the NAHC's list for our area as time goes by. You know, presently, there's only 2 on our list for our area, but it certainly is conceivable that other ones may get on there.
Yeah, and that was my other follow-up question is, I can only imagine we don't have that many tribes currently who are, first of all, interested, and second of all, may have, kind of the capacity to do this type of, or interest in doing this type of review. So, do you have kind of a contact person? Like mechanically, how does that relationship work with
Yeah,
the
well,
tribes?
we do have they have to provide us a contact person, formally in writing for the AB 52 consultation. So we have that for 2 tribes currently. And so we have already been sending consultation requests on various projects to them. And we have actually done a few consultations already. And we actually have another one coming up soon on the general plan with the tribe. We did one with the other tribe back in December, and we're now hopefully, getting to the point where that consultation will conclude on general plan level. But we will be doing it on multiple projects, going forward, and we're preparing our applicants, as well, that this may take a little time, at least a couple of months on projects. And so, the Planning Commission won't see a lot of that stuff, but we will be looking to summarize that in the staff report for you and make sure that's part of the record that, we asked for consultation on this date, we started consultation on this date, this was the general substance of the consultation, and then this is when it was concluded. It would be very important to have that be part of the record. The substance of the consultation is confidential, which makes it a little tricky because you're asking for information to put in an informational document, yet what the information you get is largely confidential. But that's not new. You typically generalize this information because a lot of this is very sensitive in environmental documents, and that's not new. But we will have to sort of, tiptoe through that to make sure we get enough information in the environmental document to help you make the necessary findings, but to also not reveal information that is and needs to be confidential under law. So this does expand a lot of what we have been doing already, and it's more work for us in terms of doing this formal consultation process. But I wanted to bring it to your attention because I believe elements of this are meaningful for the Planning Commission and your decisions on projects going forward.
Any other questions? Well, I appreciate this presentation very much. It's informative, and it's going to be helpful for me as we move forward in looking at, what's to come in future discussions, future meetings.
And if there are other topics that any commissioners are interested in, I certainly don't mind doing similar type presentations, with Mona's help, on them as well. So if we can't bring training, send you to trainings, we can bring some to you.
And I appreciate that. I know some of the trainings that are occurring, conferences, things like that, they occur during the week, so I can't make it because I have a full-time job. And
I have heard through the grapevine, there may be one coming up for planning commissioners specifically fairly soon. So maybe if we get to informal discussion.
Well, okay, maybe we'll move on to informal discussion if we're all done with this agenda item.
If I may, Chair.
Yes, you may.
I would like to share with my fellow commissioners that part of my role as being the planning commission representative on the Sacramento Valley section of APA, I've been working with them for the past several months to plan a new commissioner training for the entire section. It will be held on Saturday, April 16th, here in West Sacramento at our community center, and certainly the entire team here is welcome to attend. That is a Saturday from 9 to 3. And we have a great lineup of speakers, both for new planning commissioners and those of you who may have been around a little longer.
What's for lunch?
Lunch is included, and it will be catered, and there will be snacks and coffee and all the good stuff. It will be a great opportunity not only to get up to date on some new topics, including sustainable communities and other topics of interest, particularly for this commission, but also to network with planning commissioners from not just Sacramento, but all the way down to the valley, all the way to the Bay Area, and all the way north to the Oregon border. So we're expecting at least 50 to 75 commissioners in attendance, so it'll be a great event, and we'd love to have all of you there. I will certainly be there as well.
Thank you. Commissioner Strohfels, if you can provide that information over to Mr. Tilley so he can email that to us.
He may already have some
Oh,
of it.
okay. That would be great, so we can figure out.
I can cover the cost on that particular item for any commissioners who wish to attend.
Excellent, thank you.
Not me personally, but out of my budget.
All right. Any other informal discussion items? No?
With that, Madam Chairman, I'd like to take just 1 second before we adjourn tonight. And I don't know if you noticed in the newspaper, but we lost one of our former city council members, Thelma Rogers, who was the original city council member and the first woman on the council, and was a teacher in our local high school. And Thelma passed away here this week, and her funeral was today. And I just would like to adjourn tonight in honor of Thelma Rogers.
Thank you. Yes, we will adjourn in her memory. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.